Our next speaker will be Rachel Filozof, who will be talking about modern-day slavery. Please welcome Rachel.
What do you think of when you hear the word slavery? Do you think of Southern slaves working in the cotton plantations in the 1800s? Or the Old Testament stories of the Hebrews in Egypt? Now, certainly, those are all horrifying forms of slavery. But do you ever think about modern-day slavery? This is the slavery that still exists today, the slavery that wasn't abolished with the Emancipation Proclamation or the parting of the Red Sea. What about the children that have never known the walls of a classroom, but only the walls of the sweatshop that they work in every day, or the fields that they tend to? What about the girls that are married off when they're so young, whose futures are decided for them, but never by them? Or the women and children that are bought and sold into the sex trade, the real people with real feelings, whose lives have been demeaned to the value on a price tag? Now, the theme of these talks at BIS today is acceptance, and there are many things in the world that should be accepted, but slavery is not one of them. According to Equality Now's global sex trafficking sheet, the trafficking of women and children for sexual exploitation is the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world, with 20.9 million adults and children currently being bought and sold for sexual exploitation and for forced and bonded labor. And DoSomething.org has estimated that 250 million women and children are currently in forced labor. There are many things that we as citizens in the developed world can do to help the victims and to brighten their futures. The international problem of slavery and bondage is a large one, and it cannot be conquered overnight, but I have come up with 3 things that I think can really help the victims. The first way I see is simply by awareness. To be honest, I myself was not even aware that there was an industry such as trafficking until a few years ago, when I read a magazine article about a survivor. And I did not even know what the word sweatshop meant until I was 15 years old. The second way I see is by compassion. Perhaps this is the most important one. It can be very difficult to have compassion for people who live lives so detached from our own and deal with problems that are things that we have never had to experience. But compassion is a very important element in the fight against slavery. I think people need to know the most slavery victims come about by emotional entrapment, by poverty-driven desperation, and by ignorance, and that victims need our kindness and our care. The third way I see is by donating. Consider donating even a little bit to organizations such as the International Program on the Elimination of Child Labor, Stop Child Marriage, World Vision, or Girls Not Brides, which all try to tackle the problems of bondage, slavery, trafficking, and child marriage. In the 1700s and 1800s, most of the countries of the world abolished slavery and rule of law, but in reality, slavery continues to exist today in all the countries of the world. It may not be as obvious as 200 years ago, but its effects still continue to ruin the lives of many innocent people. So please remember that rather than with guns and knives, awareness and compassion are the most important weapons to fight this war against modern-day slavery. Thank you.